The 90s were a time when cars got a bit, well, blobby. The aggressive, hard-edged 80s gave way to a less sure of itself, more angst-ridden era. Likewise, the confident straight lines of car design softened and gave way to more apologetic and rounded forms. A few of the hot hatch favourites of the previous decade went a bit too far down this route. You won't find a Mark III Golf GTI or a 90s Ford Escort RS 2000s on many enthusiasts' must-have lists. There were still, though, a few contenders. The Ford Fiesta XR2i might have looked the part thanks to its quad fog lights and blue-striped body kit, but its unrefined engine and stodgy handling made it a hot hatch in appearance only. In stepped Ford's Special Vehicle Engineering Division, previously responsible for the Capri 2.8i and Sierra XR 4x4, to raise the Fiesta's game. Often mistakenly considered to be little more than an engine transplant from the larger Escort RS Turbo, the smaller Fiesta was its own beast entirely. Although sharing the basic 1.6-litre engine, the Fiesta used a smaller turbocharger, but, allied with Ford's own engine management system, the XR2i's head and new manifold, it produced the same 135 horsepower. It also produced a solid wave of torque at much lower RPM, ideal for eating front tyres, wrapped in unmistakable three-spoke alloys. A bigger anti-roll bar, geometry changes and quicker steering helped tighten up on the XR2i's handling, but the RS Turbo was always more of a sprinter than a carver. What is it about Italians that turns everyday terms into descriptions of desire? German tends to do the exact opposite. Quattroporte, four-door, is the classic example, but 16 valvole, meaning simply 16 valve, is not far off, and the name of the hatch it was appended to simply means type. Awarded European Car of the Year in 1989, the first attempts to heat up the Tipo recipe were distinctly lukewarm, with two 1.8-litre variants failing to set many tyres alight. Thankfully, Fiat had an in-house solution and installed a 2-litre 16-valve version of the famed Lampredi twin-cam from the Lancia Thema, matching it to sophisticated suspension, communicative steering and vented discs up front. Like that car, the Tipo 16 Valvole majored on handsome subtlety, with deeper red-striped bumpers, side skirts and 5-spoke alloys, while inside were a Momo steering wheel and the option of Recaro seats. That red-topped 16-valve engine loved to rev, delivering peak power at 6,250 RPM, and had an exhaust note to encourage such behaviour. Add a turbocharger, and that same engine would score innumerable WRC victories in the all-conquering Integrale. The Clio Williams is to the 1990s what the Peugeot 205 GTI was to the previous decade, wresting the hot hatch crown from its fellow countrymen in a manner which reflected the more mature times. Intended as a homologation special for Renault Sport to go rallying, the Williams Association was down to marketing rather than any engineering input from the then Renault-powered F1 team. But it accounts for the blue dials, seatbelts and other interior accents. With competition in mind, the Clio Williams was much more than a rehash of the existing range-topping Clio 16-valve, with a reinforced subframe, substantially revised suspension, wider track and wheels, and strengthened gearbox. The engine was also extensively reworked, gaining an extra 200cc thanks to a bigger bore and stroke, new crank, pistons, camshafts, conrods, valves, and exhaust manifold. The bonnet bulge and flared arches covering those perfect gold alloys made the Clio the epitome of the pint-sized pugilist with the sting to match its style. Intended as a limited run for collectors, such was the car's success that Renault released 2 more series, upping total production from 2,500 to over 12,000, much to the chagrin of the original purchasers. Having helped create and define the genre, the Volkswagen Golf GTI had gone off the boil by the time of its third generation in the 90s. Weight had dulled performance and handling, while engines hadn't kept up in sync. It must have been galling then that the Seat Ibiza, based on a modified Mark III Golf platform, was regarded as something a bit more special. Designed with a more Mediterranean flair than the Golf, the Ibiza was the first model produced by Seat after Volkswagen's takeover, and established the Spanish company as more of a youth-orientated brand. The Cupra, meaning cup in the sense of trophy, was so named to celebrate the brand's success in rallying, and utilised a version of the range-topping Golf GTI's 2-litre engine, producing 150 horsepower. Smaller in size and thus lighter and nimbler, the Cupra could embarrass its German relation, both in a straight line and through the corners. Later versions gained forced induction, and these Cupra models were the foundation of what is now a performance sub-brand. Stablemate to the Peugeot 106 GTI, the Saxo VTS garnered more attention at the time, although much of that was from the then burgeoning customisation scene. A favourite of max power modders, the Saxo VTS was subject to multiple modifications that have decidedly failed to stand the test of time. Regardless of their aesthetic choices, the mod squad knew what they were about in choosing the tiny Citroën as a blank canvas. The engine may have produced a mere 120 horsepower, but it loved to rev while doing so, and had only 900 kilograms to propel. So it was quick, chuckable, and a lot of fun for the enthusiastic youth who could actually afford to insure it due to that tiny engine. A turbocharged version, the S1600 Saxo VTS, won every event it entered into in the 2001 Junior World Rally Championship, driven by Sebastian Loeb. The Renault Clio Williams may have wrested the hot hatch crown from the Peugeot 205 GTI, but the latter's successor was no slouch, and was itself the harbinger of a new generation of more genteel hot hatches. A replacement for the Peugeot 309 rather than the 205, the 306 received a very handsome Pininfarina penned body and typically Gallic underpinnings that balanced passenger comfort and driver entertainment. Performance models at first used a 2-litre development of the old 1.9-litre from the 205 to create the Peugeot 306 XSI in 8-valve form and S16 with a multi-valve head. The arrival of the GTI 6 in 1996 saw not only an increase in power, but also one of the first adoptions of a 6-speed gearbox outside of the supercar Exotica. It was novel enough for a 6 to be added to the GTI badging, and the close ratios made utilising the rev-happy motor more enticing. We are saving our praise for the limited edition Rally variant launched in 1999, however. Stripped of air conditioning, electric windows, and the fancier trim of the GTI 6, the Rally, with an E, dropped 65 kilograms and cut 7/10 off the 0 to 62 time. Unlike similar performance-focused exercises today, which are envisioned by marketeers rather than engineers, the Rally actually cost less than the car upon which it was based.